Amidst the chaos of a tragic car accident, Keanu Reeves stumbles upon an abandoned baby, and what unfolds next triggers a series of astonishing and heartwarming events that will forever alter the lives of everyone involved. The world slowed to a crawl as Keanu watched the glass slip from his daughter's fingers. 7 years old and oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash, his muscles tensed, lungs seized mid-breath, the tumbler descended toward the hardwood floor of their rented cabin, the same floor where, 26 years earlier, he had knelt in his own father's blood. Miguel, no... The words caught in his throat. The glass shattered. Not just any glass, the last intact piece from his mother's collection. Crystal fracturing into a constellation across pine boards, weathered by decades of footsteps, secrets and regrets. Miguel's eyes widened, tears already forming. "I'm sorry, Daddy." But Keanu wasn't looking at him anymore. The sound had opened something inside him, a door he'd kept locked since childhood. The cabin walls seemed to pulse, memories bleeding through the paint like rising damp. His heart hammered against his ribs as the room tilted, and suddenly he was 8 years old again, hiding in the closet, watching through slatted doors as his father fell. Jack stepped between him and Miguel, his voice distant through the roaring in Keanu's ears. "Keanu. Keanu, breathe. You're scaring him." Miguel sobbed. "Is Daddy mad at me?" Jack's hand on his shoulder anchored him temporarily to the present. "Nobody. Daddy's just remembering something." He turned to Keanu, voice dropping. "Keanu, this is why I said coming back here was a mistake." He blinked, forcing the room back into focus, the broken glass, his terrified son, Jack's knowing gaze, and beyond the cabin's picture window, the vast indifference of the Montana wilderness, unchanged since that summer night in 1997. "I need air," he managed, stumbling toward the door. Outside, he gripped the porch railing, gulping the crisp autumn air. Aspens trembled gold against the darkening sky, exactly as they had when the shot rang out that changed everything. Why had he convinced himself he could face this place again? That bringing Miguel here would somehow break the cycle. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Dr. Veronica Langley, his soon-to-be ex-wife. The woman who still believed their marriage had collapsed under the weight of his workaholism and emotional distance, not knowing those were merely symptoms of something deeper. He let it ring through to voicemail. What could he possibly tell her? "I brought our son to the place where I witnessed a murder, where everything broke, where I'm still broken." Behind him, the cabin door creaked open. Jack stepped out, arms crossed against the chill. "He's calmed down. I told him you just got startled, that it wasn't his fault." He leaned against the railing beside him. "Keanu, we need to talk about why we're really here. I told you, you told me we needed closure, that Miguel deserved to know his family history." He shook his head. "But this isn't about Miguel, is it? It's about the letter." The letter. Yellowed paper, shaky handwriting. Postmarked 3 weeks ago from the Montana State Penitentiary, addressed to a name he hadn't used since they entered witness protection. A name only one living person could connect to him. "I know what really happened that night. I'm dying. The truth needs to be free before I am." 26 years earlier, Keanu had been counting fireflies from the cabin porch when his father's truck roared up the gravel drive, 2 hours earlier than expected. 8-year-old Keanu had run inside, excited to show off the fishing lure he'd made, but stopped short at the sound of shouting. "You promised you were done with this," his mother's voice tight with fear. "It's more complicated than that, Diana." His father, uncharacteristically defensive. "Some things you can't just walk away from." Keanu crept down the hallway. His father was pacing, running hands through his hair, a gesture Keanu would later inherit. His mother stood rigid by the fireplace, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "They'll come for us, Daniel, for the kids. No one knows we're here. We're safe as long as..." A knock at the door silenced them both. His father's face drained of color. "Take the kids to the bedroom. Lock the door." 12-year-old Sarah appeared beside Keanu, grabbing his hand as their mother hurried them down the hall. But Keanu wriggled free, darting into the closet instead. He needed to know what was happening, why his parents looked so frightened. Through the slats, he watched his father open the door to two men in dark jackets. One was tall and thin with a neatly trimmed beard, the man Keanu would later know as Senator Ethan Carter, though he was just a state prosecutor then. The other was broad-shouldered with cold eyes, Vincent Chambers, who would eventually be convicted of his father's murder. "Daniel," Carter said, his smooth voice at odds with the tension crackling through the room. "We need the files." "I don't have them anymore." His father's voice was steady, but Keanu saw his hands trembling. "I destroyed everything after I testified." Chambers stepped forward. "We both know that's not true. The audit trail leads right to your door." "I'm out. I have a family." "You signed on for life when you took that money," Carter said. "Your testimony put the right people away. But if those financial records surface, they'll take all of us down, you included." Keanu watched his father square his shoulders. Maybe that's what should happen. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the confined space. His father staggered backward, crimson blooming across his chest. As he fell, his eyes locked with Keanu's. Through the closet slats, a final desperate warning to stay hidden. "Find the files," Carter ordered, his voice shaking. Chambers stepped over the body. "What about the family?" "No witnesses, no loose ends." Keanu pressed his hand over his mouth to stifle a sob. Then came the second miracle of that night, the sound of sirens in the distance. Someone had heard the shot. "Damn it," Carter hissed. "We need to go now." After they fled, Keanu remained frozen until his mother broke down the bedroom door, her screams bringing him back to his body. By the time the local sheriff arrived, they were huddled together over Daniel Reed's cooling body. In the chaos that followed, only Chambers was identified and eventually convicted. Carter, whose face Keanu described repeatedly to skeptical investigators, had established an alibi. After the threats began, witness protection gave them new identities, new lives. Keanu and Sarah Reed became Kevin and Sophie Sullivan, names that never quite fit, like hand-me-down clothes. And Ethan Carter rose through political ranks unimpeded, his involvement buried, his power growing with each passing year. "The evidence was never really destroyed, was it?" Jack asked, bringing Keanu back to the present. Wind rustled through the aspens, carrying the scent of approaching snow. "I found it last month," Keanu admitted. "After the letter came, Dad hid it in the old fishing box buried under the woodpile, detailed ledgers of money laundering through Carter's campaign, names, dates, accounts." Jack exhaled slowly. "So that's why you insisted on coming back after all these years, to dig it up." "Chambers is dying of pancreatic cancer. He doesn't care about the consequences anymore." Keanu gripped the railing tighter. "Dad tried to do the right thing, Jack. It got him killed. And now you want to finish what he started," he whispered, "with your son in tow. My God, Keanu." The cabin door opened again. Miguel stood there, small and vulnerable in his flannel pajamas, clutching the stuffed otter that went everywhere with him. "Daddy, are you still sad about the glass? I can help clean it up." Keanu knelt to his level, his throat tight. "No, buddy. I'm not sad about the glass." He brushed a strand of hair from his face, hair the same shade as his father's. "Sometimes grown-ups remember sad things, and it makes them act funny. It wasn't your fault." "Uncle Jack said this was Grandpa's house. Did he live here with you when you were little like me?" Keanu met Jack's eyes over Miguel's head. They had agreed to begin telling Miguel the truth about his family, the sanitized version. But now, with the evidence unearthed and Chambers' letter burning a hole in his pocket, the stakes had changed. "Yes," he said carefully, "this was Grandpa's special place, and something sad happened to him here." "Is that why you got scared when I broke the glass?" "Perceptive, like his mother." "Something like that," Miguel nodded solemnly. "I get scared of loud noises too sometimes." Later that night, after tucking Miguel into bed, Keanu sat at the kitchen table with Jack, the recovered files between them, ledgers, photographs, and a thumb drive that still worked despite its years underground. "Senator Carter is announcing his presidential campaign next month," Jack said, scanning through the documents. "This would destroy him. It would bring justice for Dad." At what cost, Keanu? We've built lives. I have the security firm, you have Miguel, and a failed marriage, which won't be helped by resurrecting a decades-old murder case. Keanu rubbed his temples. I can't keep running, Jack. Dad's voice. I still hear it in my nightmares, not screaming for help, but telling me to run, to hide, to stay silent. He looked up at him. I've been silent for 26 years. What has it gotten me? A life built on lies. A son who doesn't know who he really is. So, tell him. Tell Veronica. But do it safely, not by poking a hornet's nest. Carter's protection has always depended on no one believing me, but with Chambers' confession and these records, and he tapped the folders. It's not just my word anymore. The sound of a vehicle on the gravel drive silenced them both. Keanu stood, that old instinct from childhood returning, danger approaching. Hide, be quiet. But it was too late for hiding. Headlights swept across the cabin windows as the car came to a stop. Are you expecting someone? Jack whispered. Keanu shook his head, moving toward the window. A rental car, a familiar figure emerging. It's Veronica, he said, disbelieving. What? How did she? I don't know. He opened the door as his estranged wife approached, her expression a mix of worry and anger. What the hell, Keanu? Veronica demanded. Brushing past him into the cabin, she stopped short at the sight of Jack. Sullivan, what are you doing here? Jack winced at his protection name. Hello, Veronica. Someone called me, Veronica said, turning back to Keanu. Some man claiming you and Miguel were in danger, that I needed to get here right away. Keanu felt the blood drain from his face. What man? What exactly did he say? That it was about your father. That history was repeating. She folded her arms. I tried calling, but you wouldn't answer. Then I called your office, and they said you'd taken sudden leave. What's going on? Keanu and Jack exchanged a look of pure fear. We need to leave, Keanu said, already moving toward Miguel's room. Now. Keanu, stop! Veronica caught his arm. Talk to me. For once in our marriage, just tell me the truth. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. Outside, the wind had picked up, branches scraping against the cabin roof like skeletal fingers. In the distance, perhaps, the sound of another vehicle. My name isn't Kevin Sullivan, he said, the words rushing out. It's Keanu Reeves. My father was murdered in this cabin when I was 8 years old. I saw it happen. I saw who did it. He gestured to the files. And now I can prove it. Veronica stared at him, speechless. The man who called you, Jack cut. Did he identify himself? No, but he said I should ask you about a senator. The final piece clicked into place. Keanu moved to the window, scanning the darkness beyond. Chambers must have told Carter about the letter. They know I'm here. They know about the evidence. What senator? Veronica demanded. Keanu, or whoever you are, our son is sleeping in the next room. What have you dragged him into? Before he could answer, headlights appeared on the road leading to the cabin. Not just one vehicle, 3. Get Miguel, Keanu ordered. There's a cellar access in his closet. Take the files. Go out through the tunnel to the boathouse. Take the boat across the lake. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you, Jack protested. And I'm not going anywhere until you explain, Veronica added. There's no time. The vehicles were getting closer. Please, I need you to trust me just this once. Take Miguel and go. In the tense standoff that followed, the sound of Miguel's voice broke through. He stood in the hallway, clutching his otter. Mommy, what are you doing here? Veronica rushed to her son, kneeling to embrace him. Over Miguel's shoulder, she met Keanu's gaze, and he saw the moment decision crystallized in her eyes. Whatever her doubts, Miguel's safety came first. We're going on a little adventure, sweetheart, she said, her voice remarkably steady. With Uncle Jack. What about Daddy? Keanu knelt beside them, his heart breaking. Daddy has to take care of something first, but I'll find you, I promise. As Jack gathered the files, Keanu quickly explained the tunnel to Veronica. It was my father's escape route. The boat has enough gas to reach the public dock on the north shore. And then what? Veronica demanded. "Call this number." He pressed a business card into her hand. "Agent Sarah Carter, FBI. Tell her everything. She's been building a case against Ethan for years. She'll protect you." The vehicles were turning into the drive now. Time had run out. Keanu kissed Miguel's forehead. "I love you, Firefly, more than anything." "I love you too, Daddy. Are you going to be okay?" The question pierced him, the same question he'd never got to ask his own father. "I'm going to make things right," he promised. After they disappeared into the cellar, Keanu grabbed his father's old shotgun from above the fireplace and positioned himself by the front door. Outside, car doors slammed. Footsteps approached. He took a deep breath, thinking of his father standing in this exact spot 26 years ago. But unlike his father, Keanu wasn't facing the men who'd come to kill him with desperate negotiations. He had nothing left to lose. A sharp knock. Keanu stood to the side of the door, shotgun ready. "Mr. Sullivan," called a familiar voice. "Or should I say Mr. Reed? This is Senator Carter. I believe we have matters to discuss." "We discussed everything we needed to 26 years ago," Keanu called back. "When you put a bullet in my father. A regrettable incident, but I'm alone now and I'm here to offer you a deal." Keanu laughed bitterly. "No deals, no more silence. It ends tonight." "Your father said something similar," Carter replied. "Consider your son, Keanu. Your friends, your wife. There's a place for all of you if we resolve this quietly." Keanu thought of Miguel disappearing into the tunnel, of Veronica's face when she finally understood the lies their marriage was built on, of his father bleeding out on these same floorboards. "My father tried to do the right thing," Keanu said. "I watched him die for it. I've lived with that my entire life. And how will Miguel live, knowing his father died the same way?" The question hit Keanu like a physical blow. History repeating. The cycle of violence and silence that had shaped his entire existence. In that moment of doubt, the sound of a boat motor roaring to life across the lake told him they'd made it out. All he needed to do now was buy them time. The front window exploded inward as a shot rang out. Keanu ducked, returning fire through the broken glass. The familiar terror gripped him, but this time it was joined by something his 8-year-old self could never have accessed. Rage. Wood splintered, glass shattered. The battle raged, bullet by bullet, minute by agonizing minute. Keanu felt a burning across his arm, a graze, nothing more. He fired again and heard a cry from outside. Then, unexpectedly, new sirens, flashing lights appearing on the road. The cavalry, arriving just as it had 26 years before. "FBI, drop your weapons." Keanu recognized Agent Sarah Carter's voice through a bullhorn. He'd met her 6 months earlier when she'd first approached him about reopening his father's case. He'd turned her away then, too scared to rip open old wounds. But she'd left her card, just in case. Outside, chaos erupted, shouting, more gunfire. Then sudden, deafening silence. "Keanu Reed," Agent Carter called. "Are you alive in there?" He staggered to the door, shotgun lowered. "I'm here." "Senator Carter is in custody. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not really. As FBI agents swarmed the property, Keanu sat on the porch steps, watching dawn break over the lake. The same view his father had loved. The same mountains that had kept their secrets for so long. His phone rang. Veronica. "We're safe," she said immediately. "Miguel's asleep. Agent Mendez is with us." A pause. "Are you hurt?" "Just a scratch." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know you at all, do I?" The question cut deeper than any bullet. "I wanted to tell you so many times. But you didn't. Trust me." "I didn't trust anyone, couldn't." He watched an eagle soar above the tree line. "I'm sorry, Veronica." "Miguel asked if you slayed the dragons." Despite everything, Keanu smiled. Their private game. Every night before bed, Miguel would ask if all the dragons were gone, and he would promise to keep him safe from monsters. Not knowing he was thinking of very real monsters each time. "Tell him I did." "And did you?" Keanu looked across the lake to where Senator Carter was being led to a vehicle in handcuffs, head bowed. The man who'd haunted his nightmares for 26 years now appeared smaller somehow, human, fallible. "Yes," he said, "but it didn't feel how I thought it would." Agent Carter approached, notepad in hand. "We need your statement, Mr. Reed. And then there's the matter of witness protection. You'll need new identities, new location." Keanu shook his head. No more running, no more hiding. He thought of Miguel, of the life before him. "I want my son to know who he is, who his family was." On the phone, Veronica sighed. "We have a lot to figure out." "I know. But Miguel needs his father. The real one, not the version you've been pretending to be. A beat. And maybe I do too." As the sun climbed higher, painting the lake in gold, Keanu finally understood what his father had tried to do that night. Not just expose corruption, but break a cycle. Create a world where his children could live without fear, without lies. It had taken 26 years, but Keanu had finally picked up where his father left off. The truth was free, and maybe, just maybe, so was he.